Hello dear friends and welcome. See, we have Debbie Macomber's Come Home to Colour colouring book open here today. Excuse me. And I'm going to be colouring this image, and I wanted to have some fun with watercolour markers, and I'll see maybe other watercolours. I never know when I start an image. I'm not great at the planning part of things. I just know I felt like playing with my watercolor markers, and so I also decided it would be a great time to show you how I prime a page in a coloring book using Daniel Smith watercolor ground. Now, watercolor ground is a primer, which means it coats the page with something. You can also use gesso. I like this watercolor ground because it's got a little bit of a tooth to it, and it's also clear, so I can still see my image very nicely. I have this little vessel of water, and I use this to put my sponge brush, or it's a sponge thingy, I don't know what to call it, and I just put it in the water and then I squash it out. Excuse me just a moment. I'm sorry, I have a frog in my throat today. And then I dunk the sponge brush into this ground and I apply it. It's kind of a glue, and gesso and watercolor ground. Watercolor ground is supposedly more absorbent than gesso. I personally haven't found much difference, but I can't say I'm an expert in any way at all. So if you're using watercolor paper, you do not need to prime your page at all. But if you're using a paper that's not meant for watercolor, then it's a good idea to prime the page in some way. And I was looking up to see if I could see the difference between gesso and watercolor ground, and I couldn't find a really clear answer. But what I found quite interesting is I found a recipe of how to make your own, and one of the basic components is an acrylic glue, and then you add other things to it, chalk and all sorts of interesting bits and bobs. But it gives, now if you use acrylic paint, if you've ever used acrylic paint and you've left it in, say, a plastic palette overnight or something, you'll see that it comes out looking like a bit of plastic that you can peel off often. So I thought that acrylic glue as a base is quite interesting because it does give the feeling to the page when you've finished and it's all dried of being slightly plasticky. Now, I don't prepare my page with masking tape or anything because it dries completely clear, and I just make sure I sort of smooth it out if it goes onto the facing page, especially in this particular instance as it's not a coloring page. When you use watercolor ground, it's a good idea to give 2 coats. So I'm giving this first coat, and then I'm going to leave it to dry completely, and then give another coat so that it's completely covered. That is very important. So now the watercolor ground has dried and it's got the 2 layers on, and I'm never totally sure that it's fully covered everything. I really hope it has. As you can see completely through here. It leaves a slightly rough texture. Here's the page without it. Just a bit different, and it feels kind of plasticky, whereas when I turn a page without it, it feels very different. So the page feels thicker, and I'm very keen to use my watercolor brush pens. So that's what I'm going to try. I got these Graphix, Marabu Graphix watercolor brush pens in 2 different art subscription boxes about 2 years ago, and I haven't used them for ages, so I thought that it would be fun to use them on this picture. And I did bring my Kuretake Zig ones along as well in case I need more. So I'm going to first try these colors, and then there are these colors as well, which maybe I might need, but I'll leave them for later. I had thought of doing like a green and pink. Maybe it will end up being green and blue, but I thought of making this like that green painted wood, and I hope this will work out okay. So, whoopsie daisy. Just going to get myself ready and start trying. And I'm going to do voiceover after this, because as you know, if I talk while I try to colour, heaven help whatever turns out. I'm going to be using, I've got both a vessel of water and my watercolour brushes, and I've got my brush pen, so I'll make up my mind which I use with this. So I also just wanted to point out, so that you're completely clear, that I did do 2 layers of the watercolour ground. I let the first layer that I showed me applying it dry completely, and then I put another layer on and allowed that to dry completely before starting here. I'm never really sure if it's totally necessary to apply this watercolour ground to these pages or not. It gives you a very different result. If you use watercolour brush pens on colouring pages, they sort of soak in and can become quite streaky. This also, though, ended up looking a bit streaky. I'm sorry, I'm slightly out of camera when I'm doing this here, but I had zoomed in and I thought that I was on screen, but not completely. So this is the curtain line I'm going against, and my idea with doing this was that I wanted to put the pen down here and then use water to spread it. And you'll see as I do this that that wasn't entirely successful. So I changed my mind and coloured more. Now, if this was watercolour paper, it would be very different. So the watercolour ground doesn't actually give you the same effect as watercolour paper at all. Watercolour paper, good 100% cotton watercolour paper, it usually has some sizing on it, and it allows the watercolours to kind of, I don't know if they sit on top, or they do that here with the watercolour ground, but you can spread the paint more easily, and it just, I don't know, it's just very different to this. I enjoy the feeling of using the brush pens on this watercolour ground. I did some pictures in Romantic Country a year or so ago using this watercolour ground, and I like my watercolour brush pens. I have these Marabu ones, and I also have some by Arteza, and then the Kuretake Zig. And perhaps I should do a page without watercolour ground using these same pens. Let me know in the comments if this is something you'd like. Now I'm trying to spread the paint with water, and you can see what's happening. It does sort of work. And of course, what do they say about artists and tools? Maybe I'm not good enough at what I'm doing, but I don't know, it wasn't, just didn't kind of do what I was expecting it to. So then I dipped my paintbrush in the water and dampened it. I do find with the water, these water brush pens, the fact that you just have no control about how much water there is makes it quite difficult. So now it's going too light. So I was umming and ahhing and trying to decide what to do and how best to do it, and it looks so easy somehow when you're watching it on a video, but when you're doing it and it's not complying and doing exactly what you had in mind, it's quite frustrating. still the end result is the sort of painted wood look that I wanted, because painted wood is also usually not all that smooth. Well, at least I don't think so. So now I've cut out a little bit of the video because it was getting very long and I suspect could be quite boring. I'm reaching the end, and here I've decided not to use the water quite so much and use more just these pens. I think it's giving a better look. Do any of you read Debbie? I'm not quite sure how to pronounce her surname. Is it Macomber or Macomber or Macomber or Macomber? I don't know. I don't know how to pronounce her surname. But I've read quite a few of her books, and I've actually read The Inn at Rose Harbour, and her books are nice. They're kind of comforting. I don't think you'd call them cozy mysteries. They're more just family stories. And I don't know, I've quite enjoyed them. I wouldn't say they're my very favourite books to read, but I like the family style of them, and I like this colouring book. I've had it for ages, and I'm generally using all my older books because I don't really have many of the newer books, because having retired now, the funds are not such as that I can afford to import that many things from Amazon anymore. And you can get some of the stuff in South Africa, but it is really expensive, so I don't feel like moaning about money. But I've got so many beautiful colouring books, and I'm using them in my videos to colour with. I was wondering how everybody's doing and how far you are with your vaccinations, etc. I've had my first jab here in South Africa. We're a little behind the United States and Europe, but it's coming up for the 6 weeks now. I had the Pfizer vaccination, and that's got a 6-week break between the two jabs. So I'm nearly due for my second jab, and our country has opened up the inoculations now to younger age groups, and they're going to, in September, I think, I've forgotten now what I read in the news this morning, going to be opening up to the 18 to 24-year-old age group. So we're catching up, which I'm pleased about. I really wanted to say a huge thank you to all my new subscribers. I'm so thrilled that so many people came to the channel with the collaboration that I did with Sandy. It was such a fabulous opportunity for me, and I'm really grateful, and I'm thrilled to have you in the channel, and I loved having your messages. And I just want to let you know that I'm very open to hearing from you and things that you would like me to color or talk about or that sort of thing in the channel. So please feel free to drop me a line and let me know. Also want to mention again that I do put a link to my Facebook page, not my personal page, but a page that I've done for my various business opportunities. And on that page, you're welcome to send me a private message if you need to. And also I do occasionally drop some free colouring pages for you to print. I've just recently put one, as I've just published a new sloth colouring book for children of all ages. So that's just gone on to Amazon, and I'll try to do a digital page through of it on my channel soon. And that may sound funny to you, but the reason I would be doing a digital page through is that to get the book, because it's self-published on Amazon, they publish it, and I can order all the copies, which I have to pay for, but not quite as much as you would pay for the book. But for me to get them to South Africa is really quite expensive and takes a while, so I've got to just wait a few weeks before I can order a copy. And Amazon has sort of closed off their look inside feature that they have on, and so I find it's really tricky to get people to actually know what the book looks like. So I decided I will do a digital page through here so that you can, where it's just become available, you can actually see what it is. Back to this image, I've taken my paintbrush, and as you could see, I finished the whole area of the green wood, and it's a bit too blotchy for my liking, so I've tried wetting this brush and reactivating it. I had left it to dry, and I'm trying to reactivate the paint and see if I can smooth it, but it still looks a bit too blotchy for me. So I'm going to see what I decide, and when the whole picture's finished, things do look different. So I may then decide to actually just leave it as it is, or otherwise I might try either another layer of this brush pen or going over it with pencil. Now I'm onto the bedspread, and I've got this, it's a Caran d'Ache palette thing, and this is smooth, and now I'm rubbing, scribbling on, it's a bit stained, but I just tried to see if that blue was coming off, and it's not, and I'm scribbling with this very pale pink on this, and then I'm activating that with, well, not activating, adding a bit of water to that, because I want to do a very pale pink wash on this bedspread as an under, I don't know if I would call it an undercoat, but like as the main, as the undercolor, if I can put it that way. And then I want to pick out the pattern in a darker pink. So we'll see how that works. And I haven't quite decided on this throw. I think I'm going to go for some of the green that's in the wood in one of the stripes, and then a pale grey and pinks. I hope that that works, and then I'll try to do similar colors on the rug. So you can see that this is very wet now, and the paper is absolutely fine with the watercolor ground. In a way, it works better doing this like this than it did with going directly with the brush pens. I hope this doesn't all end up as a hot mess. So now I just wanted to, while I'm doing this, and you can watch, I wanted to have a bit of a chat about how to kind of get back on track when you've lost your enthusiasm for life. I like to add some value type chat to some of my coloring chats, and I'd love to know how you feel about this, or if you prefer for me not to. I've always wanted to blog, but I don't write very well, so I kind of write ideas for myself and then I chat about them, so it's like a chatty blog. So today, because I know a lot of people that color suffer from depression, lack of motivation, lack of enthusiasm, and I suspect a lot of us, with the very nature of things with COVID, etc., are like that. So it's kind of this did you get up and go, get up and leave feeling. And if you are feeling like that, I just really want to assure you that you're not alone. Many people lose their enthusiasm for life somewhere along the way, and whether it's down to depression or because you're stuck in a rut, losing your enthusiasm can just really suck. However, there are ways you can get back on track and regain your enjoyment, and that is if you're not suffering from a real clinical depression. So I thought I'd just look at some non-medical ways of things to perhaps try and get your enthusiasm back. And before I do that, I want to mention that I'm sorry that this is wobbling now, but I'm just using this pale pink to, this is the color that I watered down, and I'm using it just to do that line along there. So when you're feeling this lack of enthusiasm, it's a good idea to look at what's holding you back and to try to figure out exactly what it is. Is it self-doubt? Or maybe you've had some unrealistic expectations that have led you to giving up on what you wanted. When you figure out exactly what it is that's caused you to lose your enthusiasm for life, you can then work on getting it back. Sometimes, as I've spoken before about routines, it's good to get into a healthy routine. One thing that really helps you to regain your enthusiasm is in getting into a healthy and positive routine. The things we do each day determine how we feel. So if you're currently feeling lost and like you're just sailing blindly through life, switching up your routine a bit can help. So starting with your morning routine, does the way you start your morning leave you feeling energized, positive, and inspired? If not, good idea to change it up so that it serves you better. Avoid always checking your phone or your mobile and checking the news as soon as you wake up. That can be quite depressing. So do things the night before that will make your mornings easier. When you start the day right, it can leave you feeling a lot more positive throughout. A little interlude here to just mention that I'm using a darker pink and just putting a little bitty in the base of these heart-shaped petals, and then activating the water, activating them with water so that it's giving us a bit of a shaded look. Okay, so one of the good things that you can do is to surround yourself with positivity. You've probably guessed by now that staying positive is key to regaining your enthusiasm. It's a bit of a duh moment. The people you surround yourself with make a huge difference to how you feel. If you currently spend your time with negative people, you'll naturally have a more negative outlook on life too. I've said this before as well, but if you have an opportunity to be with young people at all, they can generate such a feeling of positivity in one. I find after a half an hour with my grandchildren, I feel like a different person, even if it's on Zoom. When you start to surround yourself with positive people, you also become more positive. You can start to see opportunities and start to enjoy each day. Your inner circle should consist of people who build you up and support you. When you have encouragement and support, it does help you to feel like you can take on anything. So now, if you happen to be living with people that are negative, try to find some other positive people, even if they're online or something like this, listening to something that can make you feel positive. Try to do that for yourself every day. It's part of what we call self-care. The other thing is you may be suffering from a real clinical depression. And if your depression is just a mild depression, sort of tips like I've given you can help. Also, another thing that helps is exercise. But if you have a real clinical depression, don't wait too long. Go and see a medical professional of some sort and actually ask for help. Don't be embarrassed to do so. It is very necessary to seek help. And then the other thing is that it's a good idea to think of yourself as a friend and to treat yourself the same way that you would treat a friend. So sometimes we think that if we have compassion for ourselves, that we're being self-indulgent or selfish. But being kind to yourself is just as important as being kind to others, if not more so. If you're a spiritual person, there's a lot you can do with that as well. But even if you're not, self-care is very important. That means your self-commentary, this feeling like as a colorist, oh, my coloring's not good enough, I can't do this, blah, blah, blah. No, that's not being compassionate to yourself. You would seldom say that to a friend. So this is another one of the reasons why I decided to go on with my channel and to share how I'm doing things, because I'm not a professional artist. I'm completely self-taught, and I thought perhaps me doing this can help other people feel positive and that gee, look, she's doing it, I can also do it. She's not so brilliant, I can do what she's doing. So really, being kind to yourself means you can stop that vicious cycle of self-blame and recrimination. It prevents you from ruminating on past mistakes and builds your resilience and confidence so you can pick yourself up and get back on track. When you're kind and encouraging to yourself, your anxiety levels drop, your mood lifts, and you become more optimistic and hopeful about the future. It's also a very good idea, and this is something we as colorists do when we're coloring, is to create mindfulness. Perhaps the best way to start your self-compassion practice is to adopt a more mindful attitude to life. Mindfulness focuses on the acceptance of who you are and where you are right now, with all your faults and all your glory. Accept that whatever you're experiencing and feeling in the present moment is absolutely okay. Mindfulness and self-compassion help you to overcome denial and hesitation in your reality. It allows you space for hope to come in. Now, to get back to this coloring piece, I'm going to do the curtains, and I've scribbled on this thing again, on my Caran d'Ache palette thing, and I'm adding water because I want to use the same green that I used for the wood to do these curtains look like they're probably floaty. So I want to make them the same color but very much more pale. So in watercolor, to get different tonal values of the same color, you just add more water. So that's what I'm doing here, and just doing a light little coat of this, and then I'll pick out the pattern at the bottom. Again, yikes. What was I saying about self-blame and self-doubt? What color should I use? Should I keep it green? Should I put in the pink? I will make the decision when I get there. Another just final thought here on self-compassion is that accept the fact that hard times are part of the deal of life. Self-compassion accepts that all human lives are a mixture of hard times and good times. Often the bad things that happen are out of control. All you can do is decide how you're going to react. Will you be overwhelmed, or will you be angry, or will you roll with the punches, learn from your experiences, and get back on that horse? Sometimes much easier said than done, depending on what is happening. So in times of fear, illness, natural disasters, or any of the huge things, self-compassion and being kind to yourself allows you to take guilt or blame out of the equation and deal with what you're faced with. So once again, treat yourself as you would your very best friend. Give yourself the encouragement that you would give to your very best friend. Be your own very best, encouraging, kind friend. Back to this picture and preaching over. I hope that you're all okay with my chats like this. Please let me know if you find it tedious and you'd prefer me just to stick on the topic of coloring and what I'm doing, or if you find it uplifting and maybe something you were hoping to hear. So I'm trying to get a bit of dark color in where the creases would be to give the idea of that sort of cast shadow to give some more life and reality to the curtain. And now we're reaching the end of this video because I'll do probably another 2 versions in this coloring chat before I'm finished with this picture. And please keep in touch, drop me a message. I love, 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 love to hear from you. And I'm open to all your opinions and suggestions and whatever. So have a really wonderful day and enjoy your coloring and keep on having fun with your art and being kind to yourself. Lots of love to everybody. Bye-bye now.